RuneScape has changed a lot over the last 20 years. I think it's fair to say that this was part of the childhoods of many people, all of whom have their own stories to tell, from when the internet was a much simpler place. This is my own story, of my own experiences playing RuneScape, and a summary of what the game meant to me as a kid. Back in 2001, I was a clumsy 12-year-old with only a few very close friends. Our experience of online games up until that point were limited to Flash games, Yahoo Pool, and chess. So you can imagine my excitement when I saw my friends huddled around a monitor, talking about a new game they'd found called RuneScape, now known as RuneScape Classic. When he showed me that you could trade with other people from around the world, and you could even save your progress, it completely blew my mind. My idea of what an online game could be immediately changed. When I first opened the game, there wasn't any form of tutorial. That would come a year or two later. You were thrown into Lumbridge from the start with a "Welcome to RuneScape" message. You learn how to play by interacting with other players, talking to NPCs, and trying things out. The quests in and around Lumbridge were designed to teach you how to level up skills and use items in the game, which felt very immersive to me as a 12-year-old with no MMO experience. I have great memories of the people I met during my time in RuneScape Classic. It'd be rare to find someone who was unwilling to help out, and you'd often see those same people regularly in the same world as you, which really built a nice sense of community. You could tell everyone was figuring things out at their own pace. There was always something new to learn, and the game's design was the main contribution to this, as you weren't rewarded by being a loner. Interacting with players wasn't just encouraged, it was vital to understanding the game and advancing. As the community expanded, more and more fan sites started to pop up, each of which had thousands of players all sharing their experiences, trading, sharing screenshots, and graphics that they'd made. I even threw together my own website, which I called RuneScape Website. Yeah, that was the best name I could come up with apparently. I think it's fair to say that at this point I was completely obsessed with the game, but I knew I wasn't the only one. The game struck the same chords that Pokemon also did with me several years prior, and that was really exciting. I remember feeling so happy that I could document my gameplay, even if only a handful of people would view it. One of the things that I did document was when I took on the Dragon Slayer quest. The requirement to start the quest was to have access to the Champions Guild, which was only possible after completing every other quest in the game, so it took me months of preparation to get the requirements. The reason it took so long was because in Classic, idling was near impossible due to the game being very manual and click intensive compared to the modern version of the game. But when the time finally came and I got access to the Champions Guild, I immediately bought the Rune Longsword which I'd been saving for all those months. I then raced over to the Guildmaster and began the quest that would take me on a journey across the overworld. The quest, at least to me, felt like RuneScape's final big challenge. This was the final quest, and you were about to face the highest level enemy in the game. after assembling all the map pieces, I could finally make my way to Crandor to fight the dragon. I have to give my younger self some credit here. I remember having to kill the dragon twice back then. Someone had died previously, and because it was at half health, it didn't count. And with the same stats and equipment as I had back then, I barely survived with no food left at all. I remember being so relieved I'd finally killed the dragon, but I had this sense of panic because suddenly I was surrounded by more high-level enemies, and I didn't know how to get out. But eventually, I made it to safety. That was only one of my favourite memories. Another I often think about is when I traded my party hat for a rune two-hander. In my defense, they were equally worth 100k at the time, compared to tens of billions now. I still log into RuneScape, but it's limited to a few days a year at most. I very rarely leave the Grand Exchange, and that's because I feel like the game's kind of lost its social aspects, which were one of the main attractive things to me. I only really log in to check on my character and see if any of my old friends are online. I feel bad for disliking the current version, as I hold a lot of memories in RuneScape very close to my heart. When I started writing this video, I was under the assumption that this was because my tastes have changed through the years. However, after replaying RuneScape Classic, nearly 20 years later, it feels like I've never left, and at times I forgot I was even making this video. This isn't to say that the current version is bad, it just feels like it's evolved to be very similar to other popular MMOs, whereas with Classic, it had a certain charm which made it obvious that it was created by a small group of people, which can't be replicated by any big developer. RuneScape Classic certainly wasn't a perfect game. In fact, it had a lot of things which were very limited or clunky. For example, you couldn't speak to NPCs while someone else was. And while this is somewhat realistic, it caused absolute chaos when a new quest was added, because everyone was trying to speak to the same person to advance. On some occasions as well, staff members had to log in just to ask people to form queues to speak to NPCs. Not to mention how easy it was to macro, also known as botting. This was a huge issue in Classic, even up until its final demise in 2018. The fatigue system was introduced to combat this, but this just highly inconvenienced other players, causing it to be panned by the majority of the community. The game, much like any, had its flaws, but it's one of the best games I played growing up as a kid, and I have some really great memories of my time playing RuneScape Classic. When I began writing this video, several months ago, it was based off a question from a friend who simply asked, "What sort of games do you like, and why?" And because I'm such a picky gamer, and renowned for it unfortunately, I thought, that's a great question. I never thought I'd do anything more than a Discord reply to this person, let alone embark on an amazing journey that revisited my childhood, and also video editing, which I haven't done in years. Between the time I moved on from RuneScape fully in 2004-2005, I still haven't found an MMO I actually still enjoy. There's just something missing that RuneScape Classic had, which hasn't been replicated in any modern game that I've played, personally, and it's really frustrating. The game felt so simple, yet it was rich with features and had a ton of content to explore. The Gower brothers really outdid themselves, and it says a lot that even after 19 years, it still feels just as fun to play as it did back then. I remember anticipating new updates and watching the world expand around me on nearly a monthly basis. I knew the overworld inside and out, just as much as my local neighborhood. By today's standards, the overworld was tiny, but to me, as a 12-year-old, it was my world.